The Board of Aldermen will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Tyus. 12 present. You have quorum.
A quorum being present, our opening reflection and prayer unfortunately had a conflict this morning, so we will dispense with line item 3. And 4, introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Sorry, you have to be at the mic and be recognized to speak.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
Good morning. I would like to, since we didn't have anybody to do reflection or prayer, I ask that the chambers, if we could take a moment of silence and do prayer this morning.
Yes, we can take a moment of silence. All right. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I have a few honored guests. First, I would like to say welcome again. Yesterday was the National Day of Prayer in the city of St. Louis. They were recognized and had an amazing service down in the Rotunda, and they are back today praying through the halls of City Hall and in the Rotunda as well. So I would like to recognize Minister Kim Gaines and the National Day of Prayer Coalition and the work they're doing here in the National Month of Prayer. I would like to recognize Sheriff Betts here in the galley as a special honor guest, and I would also like to recognize the newly elected governor, one of the newly elected governors of the Missouri Athletic Club, Dave Sweeney, in the galley as well. Congratulations.
Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you all. So before I talk about my honored guests today, I really would like it if we could take a moment of silence for former Alderwoman Dionne Flowers Baker, whose mom passed away recently.
Let's please take a moment of silence.
Thank you. So my honored guests today are a few people who are behind the scenes but they're there, but they're almost invisible sometimes. So I want to thank the people with STL TV for the hard work that they do. They make us look good. I'm ready for my close-up. Mr. DeMille, those of you of a certain age or who love old movies will know where that line is from. Also, I want to take a special opportunity to thank Lou Galley. He moves throughout our halls and he does a lot of stuff. And he is really an integral part of all of the work that we do every single day. And I wanted just to let him know that we see you, we appreciate you, and we thank you for your education, your expertise, and knowledge, all of those things that you bring to the table. Additionally, I would always like to thank our servicemen and women and those people who are serving our city. Forestry, I'm wearing orange today in honor of forestry and refuse and all of those other services who do so much for our city, and they're doing it at a handicap right now. So please, please, please talk to people who need a job. St. Louis is hiring. Let's go to work. Thank you.
Alderman for the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Today, as my special guest for a second week in a row, I think he's going to keep doing this and keep it up, is the Sheriff of the City of St. Louis, my good friend, godfather of Sheriff Betts, a resident of the mighty 14th Ward, and to all the other folks in the top of the gallery as my special guest today. So thank you.
Any introduction of honored guests? Any further introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 5th.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, as my honored guest today, Mr. Sweeney, please stand up. I'd like to introduce Dave Sweeney's pants. Look at these things. They have a life of their own.
Right. Any further introduction of honored guests? Not Alderwoman from the 10th. You are recognized on the approval of the minutes from Friday, April 28, 2023.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I move for the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting on Friday, April 28, 2023.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we approve the minutes from April 28, 2023. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the alderman's mailboxes.
We will dispense with line items 8 through 11. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 1, introduced by President Green and Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance making appropriation for payment of interest expenses, principal of the city's bond indebtedness, establishing city tax rates, and making appropriation for current year expenses of the city government containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 4, introduced by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the Fire Commissioner on behalf of the City of St. Louis to enter into the 2021 Assistance to Firefighters Grant Agreement with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and accept the grant funds, appropriating said funds and a required city match for said funds, authorizing the Fire Commissioner to expend appropriate funds by entering into contracts or otherwise for grant purposes and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 5, introduced by Alderwoman Boyd, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing the Department of Health to accept an overdose data to action grant award of up to $400,000 from the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services for the grant purposes of working to decrease drug overdose death rates, appropriating such funds to the Department of Health, authorizing the expenditures of such funds to fulfill the obligations of said grant to the extent such funds are received, authorizing contracts and other documents to expend such funds to the extent received containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 6, introduced by Alderwoman Spencer and President Green, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the issuance, establishment of terms, sale of one or more series of general obligation bonds not to exceed an aggregate of $50 million to the finance the cost of the projects, providing for the payments of costs of issuance, appointing a bond registered paying agent, authorizing the preparation, execution, and delivery of such documents and actions or as necessary for appropriate, repealing inconsistent prior ordinance provisions containing severability and emergency clauses. Board Bill 7, introduced by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, pursuant to ordinance number 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to calm the flow of traffic on the 5,000 block of Cates Avenue, 6,000 block of Westminster Avenue, 58 and 5900 blocks of Giverville Avenue, 58 and 5900 blocks of Pershing Avenue, and the 45, 46, and 4700 blocks of Evans Avenue. Board Bill 8, introduced by Alderwoman Boyd, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 71506 concerning the issuance of liquor license and enact a new ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any packaged or drink liquor license for any currently non-licensed premises within the boundaries of the 13th Ward Liquor Control District containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to committee.
To the Budget Committee, Board Bill 1 and 6. To Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 4 and 8. To Health Committee, Board Bill 5. And to the Public Infrastructure Committee, Board Bill 7. That's the extent of reference to committee.
We will dispense with line items 14 through 19. First reading of resolutions.
Resolution 11, introduced by Alderman Oldenburg, President Green, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Browning. Special Committee on Red Tape.
Alderman from the 2nd, you are recognized on the first reading of resolution number 11.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, if it's permissible, can the clerk please read Resolution 11?
Yes. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the resolution.
Resolution 11, Special Committee on Red Tape. Whereas Board of Aldermen Rule 22 allows a special committee to be formed by the resolution of the Board of Aldermen. Special committee shall be appointed by the President of the Board of Aldermen. Whereas the Institute for Justice compare the local regulatory barriers across 20 cities in their February 2022 report, Barriers to Business, for 5 different types of businesses. They found that at $6,642, St. Louis was the 4th most expensive city to start a restaurant after San Francisco, Minneapolis, and Seattle. And whereas St. Louis restaurant owners report an understaffed excise department, a difficult and unpredictable application and public input process, lengthy wait times, and an inability to transfer a license to a new owner, and other among issues. Whereas the St. Louis Live Event Coalition reports an understaffed special events office, a difficult to navigate special event process, permits that require hand-drawn maps, arbitrary and inconsistent fees. And whereas Mayor Tashara Jones has announced the establishment of a new office of New Americans to ensure St. Louis is more welcoming for refugees. Immigrant entrepreneurs have additional barriers to establishing a business from differences, less access to capital, fewer personal connections to help them navigate local regulation. Whereas a city's lack of sufficient personnel across departments with onerous and outdated city permitting licenses requirements presents an immediate and urgent threat to equitable economic development and growth in the city of St. Louis. Whereas creating a special committee for the Board of Aldermen will allow the board to be proactive in addressing the needs of our residents through public discussion and legislation. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that the Board of Aldermen authorize the creation of a special committee for the purpose of updating and streamlining permitting, licensing, and inspection requirements at the City of St. Louis. The committee will work to identify strategies to protect the investment of business owners and entrepreneurs, to reduce unnecessary laws and regulations that might be a barrier to the growth of the local economy, to recommend other actions or policies that could improve and strengthen the city, and to perform other duties by the chair of the special committee. The committee shall not extend past the Board of Aldermen 2023-2024 legislative session. Introduced this 5th day of May 2023 by the Honorable Thomas Oldenburg, Alderman 2nd Ward. Co-sponsors include the Honorable Megan Green, President of the Board of Aldermen, the Honorable Shameem Clark Hubbard, 10th Ward Alderwoman, and the Honorable Michael Browning, 9th Ward Alderman.
Alderman from the 2nd, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I request unanimous consent.
Hearing objection, Alderman, would you like to make a motion to suspend the rules?
Yep, thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I move to suspend the rules for the purposes of introducing Resolution 11.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 2nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 4th, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of adopting resolution number 11. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
14 aye votes and 1 no vote.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I'll certainly yield to the Alderwoman from the 12th for questions, but I think this committee sort of is pretty straightforward and is something that this board, as long as the city, we owe it to the taxpayers to cut through red tape, bureaucracy, and any resident, taxpayer, business that transacts with the city deserves government working faster and cheaper for them.
Right. Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
I want to thank the alderman from the, what is your ward now, third, second, okay, for reading my mind, because I wasn't really going to ask you any questions. I was going to make a statement, but I'm used to man speak, which tells women that they know what they're saying. So I've been with that for a long time. But now I will ask you questions. The first thing that, where I have an objection is not through cutting through red tape.
Alderwoman, you need to
If
ask
you will,
to
I'm sorry,
inquire.
that is correct. If the alderman from, well, he already said he would yield, but the alderman from the second would yield.
Will the alderman from the 2nd yield to questioning from the alderwoman from the 12th?
I will, Madam President.
You may proceed.
First thing I want to make a statement. Please don't presume what I'm going to do, okay? Thank you. I appreciate you.
Sure.
Thank you. The reason, my question and my concern about this is that I've been approached now about 4 or 5 people in my ward who have liquor licenses, who are problem liquor license people, and they're wringing their hands of how they can get more liquor easier and quicker. I've often found that what people think is great in one part of the city is not great in the other part of the city. Thus, we had 2017, 35 people who were busted at different establishments in North St. Louis only, and many of them had liquor and were problem liquor properties. So have you had any conversation with the liquor license people, and especially Mr. Miles McDonald, I think is his name, about that he felt like he was understaffed? Because I heard you make a statement as if this was already a foregone conclusion. And to me, usually investigations start out with a, let's look and see if this is true, rather than this is already a foregone conclusion, because if it is, I don't know why we're having a hearing.
Absolutely, Alderman. First, let me apologize. I didn't want to, expect to read your mind. I just assumed that you voted no, that you might have some inquiries. So I apologize publicly on that behalf. Secondly, obviously, nothing's a foregone conclusion here, and I think the work of this committee is to bring the liquor license commissioner and his staff in to discuss that as a potential barrier to entrepreneurism. We're just getting started. This is really just to create the committee and come up with some findings and recommendations. Nothing's a foregone conclusion, I can assure you of that. I will tell you that I think it's important to note that the Institute for Justice did a study around opening businesses, and one business in that industry was bars and restaurants. And in the city of St. Louis, it takes 36 steps, 8 different permitting fees, and costs almost $7,000 for someone to open up a bar or restaurant. Now, maybe that's prudent. I can tell you in the world capital, also in this study, the world capital of restaurants in Manhattan, New York, takes the same 8 permitting steps and fees, and it only costs $2,700. So I think if we're charging people a great amount of upfront capital just in permitting fees and in various amounts of steps, it's something that the committee should look at. And I think your point is something that committee is going to take overwhelming consideration on, which is liquor licenses throughout the city and various neighborhoods, and making sure that we're always getting neighborhood and community and resident input.
So, so when you talk about the problems of getting a liquor license, we don't have that problem for restaurants, because we don't have any sit-down restaurants in North St. Louis, but except for 1 or 2. That's been my mantra for 30-something years, okay? And what we have is Arab gas stations and Arab stores that get liquor licenses when the constituents come and say, we do not want them, and then they have shootings and killings, on and on, so much so that when the police show up, they say, oh, Alderwoman, you've been fighting this for 30 years. Why? And my question is, why is it still open? We kind of found that out when I got data that showed that they had only closed 1 problem property in all of North St. Louis in 5 to 7 years, and it wasn't even one of the places that had shooting. We actually have a place at Shreve and Anderson that has had 5 or 6 shootings in the last 5 or 6 months. But the problem properties people can't find a way to shut it, because they can find loud noise as a nuisance, but they can't find gunfire as a nuisance. Okay, so when I stand here before you, I come here with 30 years of experience and saying that ain't what we need. We don't need more liquor in North St. Louis. We need a lot of other things. We need a hardware store. We need sit-down restaurants. We need not just low-income housing, because I agree with you when you said about instead of $500 going to certain people, let's learn how to make people wealthier. That's one of the things that I do. Is work on that. So when you have this hearing, what my concern is that it'll be all about, because it's hard to in South St. Louis, but I want you to also, when you get this together, I want you to give the stats about how hard it is in North St. Louis. And when you break it up, you won't find it hard at all. In fact, all my problem properties were pushed on me just about by the Board of Adjustment, which my people came and said, we don't want them. And then they let them open anyway. Of course, they all live in South St. Louis. So they tell me, well, you guys need this. I don't know how they know we need it, because they don't live there, and they don't put up with the gunfire. And the only great thing that came out of one of the stores who was indicted and then came into our chambers with our 3 gentlemen that are no longer here is that 8 of them blew up their properties the next day after they were indicted. And then one of them was in my ward, I was able to tear it down. And then crime rate went down about 60%. So my concern is that when we do this, we don't assume one size fits all, because it does not. Because that's the reason why the people didn't want the gas stations at the gentleman, former alderman from the 21st, who put them right up against people's houses. There's a whole bunch of reasons why people in St. Louis don't want more liquor, don't want it easier. So one size does not fit all. I don't have a problem at all about inquiries and about having a special committee. I do have a problem about special committees that come with an announcement that it's already a problem to get liquor, and it should be faster. That's my problem, okay? That it should say, let us look at this and see if it is a problem or not in the city, and is it a problem everywhere? When you come with a foregone conclusion, I don't find the facts to be valid. Thank you. I have no other statements or questions, really. That was really a statement to you of why I was opposed to that. And so I've already made my concerns known. We can have this, but to me, if we start out with the way it's already been presented, it is not a valid thing. It is a way to get to liquor. So we need to change the premise of what we're doing to talk about if we would inquire to see if this really is a problem, instead of a foregone conclusion that this is a problem, because that does not make it a valid inquiry. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Would the Alderwoman from the 12th yield for questioning?
The Alderwoman from the 12th yield to questioning from the Alderman from the 4th. Alderwoman, will you yield? You may proceed.
Thank you. And thank you, Alderwoman, for yielding. Just a quick question, and this is a genuine question. I know that in the past, liquor moratoriums have been used. Is that something that could address the particular issue in your ward, your concerns with this?
Oh, not only do I have a liquor moratorium, I have one about where a gas station wasn't supposed to be built, and I can show you the law. And funny thing, under Francis Slay, it was built anyway. Now the lawyer who said it could be runs from me because he doesn't want to testify. He didn't want to testify before my committee and swear up and put his hands, because he knows that what he testified will get him disbarred. So what I'm telling you is that depends on where you are in the city, is how the rules and the laws are enforced. That's why I keep talking about the Board of Adjustment being all these people from South St. Louis and one person from North St. Louis as a temporary. That is not a fair way to have hearings and to assess things. And then people even told me, well, it's got to be somewhere. No, it doesn't. So we, in fact, moratoriums grew out of, you don't know this, but I do because I've been here. Moratoriums started in the 5th Ward under Mary Ross for the very fact that they were pushing liquor licenses, just like they do homeless shelters, into North St. Louis. Anything that's negative, they push into North St. Louis and get it out of South St. Louis, okay? So, no, it doesn't work. It should work, but they find ways around it, and they break the law just outwardly. Now, Mr. Miles McDonald has not done that, but it was done under pressure from a mayor called Francis Slay.
Understood. Yeah, and I know that the Alderwoman, I'm bad at numbers here. Alderwoman from the 10th and I have had a whole lot of discussions on the way that various communities look at liquor licensing. I'd also just be curious in your just initial thoughts. You had mentioned that there aren't enough sit-down restaurants in your community.
Been saying it for 30 years.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I know at least near me, when new restaurants are looking to open and to thrive, oftentimes that liquor license is a component of their ability to. The markups are so great on liquor, basically. They don't make their money on food. They make their money on beer sales, spirit sales, so on and so forth. Is that a component that you would want to see in sit-down restaurants in your community, or no?
So it depends on where they let it go. You know, because I'm a zoning person, and my husband has a master's in urban affairs, and I've traveled all over the world, to Canada and every place, learning about how to do zoning and how to do zoning in black communities, because it's different. Chicago has some real good examples of what we should be looking at. So it depends on what it is, and if they let it. The problem that I have is then Board of Adjustment then puts it in inappropriate places. Like they put gas stations up against people's houses in North St. Louis. They don't do that in South St. Louis in the Central Quarter. In fact, they make them put up a wall, and they don't let we can go to Boyle and Lindell. They can't sell liquor. They can't sell the paraphernalia, and they can't sell the tickets to win the lottery. Okay, so it's very different. That's not right, because zoning is zoning everywhere. If you're zoned A, I'm supposed to be treated the same way as the people in the Central Quarter. That doesn't happen. I'm not saying I don't think that people should have liquor. I have liquor in my ward, but the places that the Board of Adjustment or Francis let go around the law are all problems. The ones that are legal, they kind of mind their business, okay, but that's what that was put there for. And even ones that we used to have a lot of problem with over the time, they've kind of gotten used to me, so they have done things like put fences around their property and things like that to keep people from hanging out, and so it's gone away. I'm not opposed to restaurants having liquor. I'm opposed to them being in inappropriate places, and when you make it so that they can cut through steps, that might be good for where you live, but it doesn't mean it's good for where I live. Until I can have the same things you have, which we were well on our way until I was gerrymandered. So if we can have the same things, we would love it. But we would just take a IHOP. We would take not Captain D's, because that's not a sit down. Well, Red Lobster won't come to the city, so it's not just North St. Louis, it won't come to the city. But if we could have sit down restaurants, that's just breakfast restaurants, because what we have is fast food. And I'm on record back in 1993 opposing the Taco Bell, that they let it go up there anyway, because all we have on Natural Bridge is fast food, and it is bad, and black people have diabetes and high blood pressure. And they actually wrote a recent, really decent article in the Post-Dispatch about why I was there testifying against it. So, of course, the people just let it go anyway. And that is my problem, is that when we make rules lax, or even when we have strict rules, they don't follow them for my community.
I understand that, and I've joked around with some of our colleagues here that the ward that I represent, particularly the old ward that I represented with Dogtown, is very friendly towards liquor licensing, and that I'm bringing maybe the exact opposite end of the equation that you are, because I think near me, with the exception of the 3 a.m. licenses, I believe that most of the folks in my community would like to see more places to go and sit down and have a drink. But I'd certainly be interested in working with you and with the Alderwoman from the 10th on this. I know we've had previous discussions on it, on what we may be able to do to make the liquor licensing seem equitable, because I do understand from previous conversations that it is a different feel to have people standing out front of a liquor store than it is sitting in a pub somewhere. And so there's certainly a lot of work to be done with it. I do want to make it easier for people to open those sit-down restaurants and those pubs throughout the city, north, south, central corridor. So I am supportive of this, but I certainly don't want you to think that that I at least am not hearing your concerns with this, and I certainly am interested in having further discussions to see what may be able to be done to address some of your concerns with it while still promoting the idea that the city is, you know, open for business and moving into the 21st century.
May I add one other thing to my response?
Yes, absolutely.
Besides the whole thing about pushing the liquor in North St. Louis, the other thing is that we don't then get police response, or we don't know what to do. How is a store that has had 5 shootings in the last 5 months not closed? How is that open? How is that open? And I can show you now, even the police are saying, Alderwoman, they had another one. Why isn't that closed? Because somebody over in the city councilor's office, Sue Phelps, oh, did I say a black woman called Sue Phelps that was able to close Dana Frank Kelly's place in Nothing Flat downtown? She's the only one that's over there. Now they've moved her finally. Some other people moved, but she closed 1 in 5 years. But she lets this go on. So that's what I'm saying about the game that you guys don't seem to have to deal with. I love the places in your ward. I've eaten at all of them, from Olympia's to over in Dogtown to wherever. I don't have a problem with it. I've eaten in Soulard. I've eaten all over the city. I lived in South St. Louis, Central Quarter, and North St. Louis. But the difference I know about is I've experienced, not just because of what somebody's telling me. And it's not me, myself. The people in my community come down and testify. And then they just act like they didn't testify, okay? We also caught people who have forged liquor petitions. If we're gonna do liquor petition, then they'll say, when you ask them, they'll say, well, I don't know anything about who carried my petition. One of the things I wanna say, and I was gonna bring this anyway, is that if you're doing a liquor petition, and I still think you should, that you should have to have it, the person who's carrying it should have to be, the person has to be registered, and they have to come and testify. Because I had a liquor license okayed in my ward, and it was right across from Antonio French's grandmother. She has the cleaners. And I saw her name on it. I know Ms. French didn't sign it. So the liquor commissioners had passed it. I went out in a matter of hours, and then when I told them I was out, they said, oh, I don't think we worked that right. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't a good petition anymore. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And then when we tried to question the guy about who carried it, then he didn't, oh, it's some guy, he's not here. Well, how do you hold him accountable? And he actually was the second person in my ward who was indicted and cannot, he's the main one actually, the one that's testified against the people. So he can't have that spot open anymore as liquor, but he's right up the street, and Alderwoman Boyd knows all about it. Everything, he's up there, and when you look at all those people, they all connect to one spot. We couldn't get the police to do anything. We actually turned the people into the feds. The feds were able to do what our police were not. So something is wrong. That is why I'm up here. Not against liquor, because Lord knows my husband went to St. Louis U High, and so everybody who went there know liquor is part of the culture and not getting drunk. I'm just joking, but I'm just saying that I'm not opposed to liquor. I'm opposed to people imposing it in places where people don't want it, and then they don't care how long or negative it goes on, and they don't do anything about it. So if we're going to do something about, and I understand, because I didn't know it cost that much, and I do think that's ridiculous, okay? So I've learned something already, but I'm just saying there's another side to what you don't see, because you don't have to. Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Madam President.
Right, any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Now I'm sharing with a tall person. I appreciate this committee a special committee being formed. In my neighborhoods, we've had problems with this process on both ends of the spectrum. On the one hand, businesses have had to jump through so many hoops with so much effort to just get their businesses open in terms of whether or not you can even find the people to sign the petitions, and whether or not there are enough people who live around the business to even possibly have any chance. I think we've seen a lot in the news recently about the businesses that have had troubles in this way, and I think it's so important to listen to them and act on it. In the same way, on the other end of the spectrum, there was a business in one of my neighborhoods. It wasn't wasn't in my ward, but it was in my, now it's in Ward 1, but that there was consistently gunshots in front of the business, people fighting in the business, people shooting in the streets who came from the business. And it took residents an incredible amount of time to gather the signatures that they needed to get the liquor license revoked from this business. So I really think that in the best case scenario, that this special committee could both address issues on the front end and the back end of the process, so that when there are problems in our wards and our neighborhoods, that our citizens, our residents have the ability to fight back, because the liquor process isn't only hard on the front end, it is just as hard at the back end when our folks need to address these issues in their community. So I rise in support of this committee. I'm very excited about it. I know there are so many people probably watching and listening who are very grateful as business owners, as residents, to have the opportunity to weigh in on this. I feel like if there's something that the city is doing, actively making it harder for businesses and residents, that's exactly what we should be addressing in government. So I appreciate this. Thank you to my colleagues for supporting it, bringing it forward, and I am grateful for the chance to speak on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 7th.
Yes, I just wanted to add, I also hope that the Red Tape Commission, of course, looks at the liquor license and excise, but also many other...
Get closer to the microphone.
Sorry, I was saying I hope that while the Red Tape Commission looks at liquor license and the alcohol, you know, that process, that we also consider the various other business owners that are facing challenges as well because of some of the red tape and barriers in City Hall. I met with someone who's trying to open a daycare facility within my ward.
You might need to bring the microphone a little bit.
And it might be my voice a little bit too. I met some folks who are trying to open a daycare facility within the 7th Ward that are also running into barriers when open facilities. I've met folks that are interested in doing unhoused services that are also running into barriers that the city is there. So I guess I'm just putting out a general ask to make sure that when the commission meets that it addresses all, you know, I think there's a lot of issues that various different type of businesses face. And also I'm glad that this is happening and would like to be added as a co-sponsor of the resolution.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 8th. No? Okay. Misunderstood the movements there. Alderman from the 2nd, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Before I renew my motion, I just want to say this is a committee to evaluate all businesses, to remove barriers so that restaurants, dry cleaners, daycares, any good particular use can be evaluated, and so that it can be efficiently brought forward and the transaction with the city can be cheap and quick. This is not just liquor license. That was one example that was used in there. Also, there are several complaints and input that I receive around special events, the process and the protocol for that. So it's evaluating all those procedures in various city departments, as well as looking to evaluate some of the county offices process. There are partners often when businesses come to City Hall or residents come to City Hall. So everything is on the table to evaluate and make sure we're doing it cheaper and faster for the taxpayer. So what I will say before I renew my motion is that I enjoyed this conversation and I look forward to it taking place in the committee once it's formed.
Right. Alderman, you have to make the motion.
We do not have a motion on the table
You
to
did
adopt?
not make the motion
That's what
yet.
I thought. Okay, thank you very much.
Not a problem.
I move that we adopt Resolution 11.
It's been moved by the Alderman for the 2nd. I think Alderman from the 5th was the one that I heard, that we adopt resolution number 11. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Thank you. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
14 aye votes and 1 voted present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 2nd to adopt resolution number 11.
Resolution 12, introduced by Alderwoman Keys, requiring the Pledge of Allegiance at all Board of Aldermen proceedings.
Alderwoman from the 11th, you are recognized on the first reading of resolution number 12.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to request that that be moved to committee for discussion.
Do you have a committee preference? Legislation and rules?
There you go. Thank you.
Okay. There's been a motion from the Alderwoman from the 11th. Is there a second? Okay, and seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st that we assign resolution number 12 to the Legislation and Rules Committee. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 13, introduced by Alderman Aldridge, Alderwoman Velazquez, Alderwoman Schweitzer, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and Alderwoman Sanier. Continuation of the Special Committee on Long-Term Health Care Facility.
Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized on the first reading of resolution number 13.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. If possible, could the clerk read the resolution?
Resolution 13, continuation of Special Committee on Long-Term Healthcare Facilities. Whereas the Special Committee on Long-Term Healthcare Facilities convened in 2022-2023 sessions needs additional time to hear testimony and complete its report. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has ripped through communities and healthcare facilities, inflicting unimaginable suffering. Healthcare providers and frontline workers have struggled to provide the care that St. Louis desperately needs. Whereas nursing home facilities and home care providers have been at the forefront of this need. These healthcare workers have experienced low pay and difficult working conditions for years. The pandemic exacerbated these conditions, exposing fault lines in the system. Inadequate staffing levels have become routine in many facilities. And whereas the majority of the nursing home facilities in the city of St. Louis, which have collective bargaining agreements with labor unions, have better health outcomes for residents who contract COVID-19. Ensuring union access and the rights to organize is an essential part of solving the long-term health care crisis. And whereas the implementation of workplace safety and health programs is an essential factor in reducing the extent and severity of illnesses. It is widely known that infections are a leading cause of death and complications for nursing home residents and home care recipients. In addition to common infections that have plagued society for decades, the onset of COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted elderly, people with disabilities, and nursing homes. Whereas staffing shortage and attrition have further strained nursing homes during the pandemic. In response to challenging work conditions and the high risk of COVID-19 infection, some nurses, certified nurses assistant, and other workers are leaving the sector during this critical time when there is an increased demand for their skills and expertise. And whereas unless infection prevention control in nursing homes is improved, the issue will only get worse. The resident population is increasing as baby boomers age and people are living longer. Now more than ever, it is critical for nursing home workers to be trained on safety protocols and become vaccinated and boosted. And whereas healthcare worker pay is often below the city recommended level of $15 an hour, the committee should look at ways to help employers reach higher rates of pay or provide hazard pay. Healthcare workers are often working in unsafe conditions because of inadequate staffing, substandard personal protective equipment, or other factors. It is essential for healthcare workers to be respected, protected, and paid well to do the important work that they do. And now, therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that the creation of a special committee be authorized for the purpose of investigating the state of the long-term care field, its nonprofit and for-profit providers, its regulatories, its recipients, and its demographic, rates of pay, staff and pipeline, systematic problem, and possible solutions. Be it further resolved that no later than March 29, 2024, the special committee will share its findings and recommendations with the Board of Aldermen. Be it still further resolved that The report will make recommendations regarding safe staffing, equitable pay, advocacy for worker safety, and worker safety training. The aforementioned special committee is not limited to size, but may consist of members of the board, older adults, individuals with cognitive or functional limitations, family caregivers, healthcare workforce members who directly provide long-term service and support, those who demonstrate experience in dealing with issues related to long-term services and support healthcare policies, representative of healthcare interests, individuals from a variety of geographic and demographic groups. The special committee will also seek input from the experts in the fields and work safety, as well as experts in long-term care. Introduced this 5th day of May by the Honorable Rasheem Aldridge, 14th Ward Alderman, and the co-sponsors include the Honorable Alderwoman Daniela Vasquez, Alderwoman of the 6th Ward, the Honorable Ann Schweitzer, Alderwoman of the 1st Ward, the Honorable Shameem Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman of the 10th Ward, the Honorable Alicia Sanier, Alderwoman of the 7th Ward. Adopted this 5th day of May.
Madam Clerk, could you please add me as a co-sponsor as well?
So noted.
Thank you. Alderman from the 14th, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would ask for unanimous consent.
Alderwoman from the 12th, please state your point of order.
I was trying to clarify if I heard the clerk correctly in saying if this committee was going to be comprised of more than members of the board. That's what I was trying to understand. If that,
Yeah.
And would they be voting members?
No,
Okay, so
they're
just,
advisors. Yeah,
I withdraw my objection.
okay. Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't recall hearing my name as a co-sponsor. I'd like to make sure that I'm added as a co-sponsor to the resolution.
Thank you. Alderman from the 9th.
I would also like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Alderman from the 14th, you may proceed.
I would like to make a motion
To adopt.
to adopt resolution number 13.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution number 13. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 14, introduced by Alderman Cone, President Green, and the following alderpersons: Velazquez, Aldridge, Browning, Schweitzer, Clark Hubbard, and Sanier. Supporting gender-affirming care.
Alderman from the 3rd, you are recognized on resolution number 14.
Thank you, Madam President. I request that resolution number 14 be moved to or referred to the Health and Human Development Committee.
Is there a second? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st, that we assign resolution number 14 to the Health and Human Development Committee. Is there any discussion? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just request that I be added as a co-sponsor.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of first reading of resolutions.
We will dispense with line item 21. Courtesy resolutions. Oh, sorry. Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adopt the courtesy resolutions consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I move to adopt the courtesy resolutions and consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt the courtesy resolution calendar. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, there is discussion. Alderman from the 3rd.
I just want to make sure that I'm added as a co-sponsor to resolution number 10.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Also, a point of order. I see that we're naming it honorary name. Are we going to follow up, I guess, with the actual, because we have to have a board bill.
Correct.
That does that.
Yes.
So
That has been conveyed, yes.
Okay, because
Okay.
Otherwise doing that doesn't do anything. All right,
Correct.
thank you.
Yes. All right, any further discussion? Was motion made by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adopt the courtesy resolutions calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Friday, May 12th, full board meeting in the chambers at 10 a.m.
Any further announcements? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President. On Thursday, the 11th at 2 p.m., we'll have a public safety meeting.
Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 7th.
I'm gonna try to get the mic right this time. Okay. Thank you, Madam President. Obviously, May 5th is upon us. Cinco de Mayo is such a big time, especially in the 7th Ward. So I look forward to seeing folks in the community there and some colleagues there. And then also, we'll be having the first 7th Ward Town Hall on May 24th at 6 p.m. at Hodgins Elementary School. And Berthany Williams, who is the director of the Streets Department, will be our special guest.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 12th.
And members of the board, yesterday was it yesterday? Well, I was fortunate enough to attend a police memorial. Was that yesterday we were there? Wednesday, okay, yes, that's not yesterday, but it was touching, and it reminded me so much of how important it is to have police in your community. Two of the names that were read were especially important to me because in 1994, when I was a new alderperson, Todd Merriweather, police officer Merriweather, who lived in my ward and now is back in my ward again, went out because somebody was messing with his car and they shot and killed him, a young man. A few years later, Officer Robert Stanzi was at the corner of Marcus and St. Louis Avenue. It was on election day, and we heard boom, 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 and he lost his life. Police are very important people in our community, and that was just a reminder when you looked at all of the names that have lost their lives over the year protecting our rights to freedom. And then those two very special ones, one who actually lived in my ward and was killed in front of his house where his parents lived, and the other one that's just around the corner. I just want to thank the police officers for all they do and to say, please be careful and safe when you're out in the streets protecting our rights.
Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 6th.
Yes, just wanted to recognize some folks who I think have since left, but Shira Berkowitz and Robert Frischer from Promo. They have done so much for advocating for LGBTQIA rights in the state and in the city. A few other announcements. There's another Cinco de Mayo happening event in Keener Plaza today. So wanted to shout out some of the folks from the Latina community who are doing that. Also in the ward, in the 6th Ward, the Compton Heights and Compton Hill house tour is happening next week. So it's May 12th and May 13th on Mother's Day. It's a really special event for the community and some beautiful houses. Also, South Grand is having a brew hop next week, so it's a happening time in the 6th Ward, but just wanted to recognize those few events in the community.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 13th.
Because my colleague had it up too high, could not reach it. But I want to apologize because I see our previous Alderman, Frank Williams, and I want to recognize him and thank him for being here.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, I heard Keener Plaza, and I don't know if we did this and I missed it, but a young man lost his life not too long ago downtown, and I was wondering if we had done a moment of silence for him or not.
We can take
Okay.
that now.
All right, thank you.
Please bow your heads for a moment of silence. Alderwoman from the 10th.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I was just, for a couple of announcements, I do the announcements afterwards, but I did want to share the sentiments of Alderwoman from the 12th. I was in that space too for the police memorial, the 37th annual police memorial. So to think of the history and the legacy and the work and the sacrifice that they make, it was very touching and very overwhelming. I'd like to thank Captain Christy Marks for having me as her guest, and retired Sergeant Glenn for coming along with us and making new connections in that space as well. Also, I would like to congratulate Betty Jean Kerr Center's Hope Wells ribbon cutting was yesterday. They just opened up a new behavioral health space yesterday. Ribbon cutting is an amazing space right there on Delmar and Bolivar in the 10th Ward, meeting people's needs and the behavioral health needs right where they are. This is Mental Health Awareness, Behavioral Health Awareness Month, so I think it was fitting that we cut that ribbon yesterday, and I would like to commend Dwayne Butler and all the work he does. I almost called him by a personal name, so that's why I had to catch myself. And with that, I will yield on my announcements and ready for them.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? I do just want to remind all of our committee chairs to get your vice chair over to the clerk, and also your regular meeting time for your committee over to the clerk so we can get those set. Right. Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. All members were present this morning.
Wonderful. Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we adjourn until next Friday, May 11th, in the chambers.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adjourn until next Friday at 10 a.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.